And at 10, Cassidy. Assuming for this scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, which she's not, but you know what, for you guys. This is one of the dumbest things that William could have done. Or maybe he doesn't actually consider it a mistake, since the one you should not have killed, after all, is keeping him alive. They're doing it as a way to make him suffer, though. So since it's potentially a mistake, but could also be considered a good thing depending on the angle, I'm gonna go with number 10 for this one. But even if he does consider that a good thing, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, which he's not, killing those 5 kids that made up the missing children's incident that included Cassidy was certainly a mistake, since it caused literally everything else in his life to go downhill. I mean, it was starting to go downhill, but it started going even worse, okay? And he does end up suffering extremely only because of that kill and the others, okay? So if you don't want to count Cassidy as the mistake, because she's not the one you should not have killed, which is still the case, I don't care what you guys say, I know. Count the missing children's incident itself as the mistake. And at 9, blueprints. There is no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those. She can dance, she can sing, she's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips, she can take song requests, she can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. This classic line of Afton being interrogated, I'm guessing, that plays the first time you open up Sister Location, just showcases how stupid this man is, okay? The cops know what these animatronics are capable of and what they were designed to do. And you want to know why? Because the blueprints are just readily available. This man included wireframes of a child being stuck in Funtime Freddy and just left it on his computer. What? Why would you do that? Well, that's so stupid. So when they found that, because you know obviously they're gonna search his computer, they instantly ended up being even more suspicious of him, and then they were keeping an even closer eye on him. That's also probably why he ends up starting to dress in the spring Bonnie suit even, maybe, which ultimately ends up screwing him over as well. So yeah, designing the Funtimes as killbots was definitely a bit of a mistake, but then leaving the wireframes on your computer was something even dumber, especially considering how one of them was meant to symbolize your dead wife and the other one ended up killing your daughter. And at 8, Charlotte. While yes, Charlotte may have been Afton's first true kill, causing his descent into madness, this is more so because of what she really turns into. Because like somehow this also didn't make Henry end Afton instantly, because if he had, I would understand that. But in the games, Charlotte ends up possessing the puppet, who then gives life to the other animatronics, which causes Afton to disassemble them and then release their spirits that then scare you into your spring Bonnie suit that crushes you, and then you start going even crazier. But even discounting the game aspect of her like killing being a mistake, in both universes where William kills Charlotte, Henry comes after him for it, which results in what should be his death multiple times over. And not to mention how in the books specifically, unbeknownst to her, she is an animatronic robot that was meant to replace the daughter that Henry had lost, but it's also revealed that the animatronic is also, her adult form is also Baby as well, who can switch between her human and baby form at will, and then her human form doesn't remember being Baby. So yeah, Charlotte in the books also ends up being Baby, which is just a huge mistake for both Afton, Henry, and Scott Cawthon. And at 7, Storta's daughter. While we all know that Afton isn't the best father, I think that it's something else to end up locking your robot possessed by the soul of your dead daughter in an animatronic testing facility. What? That seems to be what's going on, and that seems to be a bit too far, if you ask for my humble opinion. But nevertheless, he still did it, and that's what Sister Location is all about. And William was even the one who sent us down there as Michael to find out what's been going on, and then we get shoved full of energy bits so that all of those homicidal maniac robots escape. God, did William like know about that plan? Because in FNAF 6, Baby says that she'll make her daddy proud. So was William's intent to send us down there so that Baby could escape? And if that is the case, why did he lock her down there in the first place? I don't know. I mean, like, if she was your daughter, why not just have her like chill around the house? Sure, she's a 6-foot tall giant clown robot, but in the books, Baby was able to transform between Baby and a human looking animatronic at will, so why not add that to this version, and then you can have your daughter back, albeit a little bit more messed up, but like still more like you in the long run, right? This family's messed the hell up and nothing makes sense. But there you go. It happened. It still happened. Wow, that's messed up, man. And at 6, single dad. Alright, honestly, while he may have done some bad shit, we have to at least give Afton credit for being a single dad. In this economy, being a single parent sucks, okay? Like, yeah, sure, you love your kids, they're a blessing, yada yada yada, but come on, it sucks, okay? And especially considering how it seems like William didn't even want his kids, the fact that he kept them alive is... Wait a second, that's right, he didn't. One of the worst things to happen to William was becoming a single father because it did not help the kids. It definitely ended up being worse for them, but no matter what way you slice it, William suffered as well. If he didn't want the kids, he suffered because he had them. If he wanted them, he suffered because he had to watch them die and it was his fault. If he didn't care either way, his remaining son decided to dedicate his entire life to undoing his father's work and ultimately tried to kill him. It's a whole thing. Michael didn't even consider nursing home, okay? He was like, nope, straight up to the big shuffleboard game in the sky for you, old man. Or, I guess maybe the one probably downstairs. Side note, some people think that hell's a punishment, but like if Satan wants us to sin, why would he punish us for doing what he wanted, right? It feels like we'd be rewarded. Afton's probably just like bumping, just chilling with Satan. Halfway through into number 5, Princess Quest. The whole reason that Princess Quest was a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanny's consciousness away, or to lock the Vanessa part away, and prevent her from regaining control of her own body, okay? So why did William create, or allow for the creation of a fail-safe that undoes all that work and allows for her to escape? I mean, sure, like they didn't expect the kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of everything that's happened, you'd think that Afton would have smartened up after at least 40 years, but you know, I guess not. That's like having a self-destruct button on whatever thing you were gonna use to take over the planet or whatever. Or like if any superhero had a take all my powers button just like on the suit. Okay, why give it a way to fail? Is that just the neurodivergent in me coming out? But like still, this is one of the dumbest things that William has done and probably the 3rd dumbest overall. But it's seriously, dude, like why have a way to undo your evil plans? That's one of the most ridiculous things I think in this story. All right, I get that it's like so that we can save her and have a good ending from like a gameplay perspective, but that ending isn't even canon. So we could have done without it. It's just one of the dumbest things known to man at this point. And if this is on the list of worst things that happened to Afton, you know this man is bad. Most of the that happened to him is his own fault. Honestly, like straight up, it's his own fault. And for Possessed. Assuming for this scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, this was one of the worst things that William had done to him. Or maybe he doesn't consider it a bad thing. Like I hinted at earlier, like maybe he didn't think that getting possessed by Cassidy is bad, since the one you should not have killed after all is still keeping him alive. They're doing it as a way to make him suffer, or at least they were making him suffer until sometime between FNAF 6 and Security Breach. So since it's potentially a bad thing, but also could be considered a good thing depending on the angle, it's kind of like midway on the list. But even if he does consider it to be a good thing, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, killing those 5 kids and making the missing children's incident a thing, it was a bad thing, since it caused basically everything else in your life to go downhill. And he does end up suffering extremely only because of that kill and the others. Plus, it means that the law was keeping their eyes on you, because you know, kids died in your establishment after a couple of your kids had died. The missing children's incident wouldn't be something that he'd considered a good thing in that regard, but probably he would have considered it therapeutic. Getting close to the end at number 3, Henry. Why did you think that killing Charlotte wouldn't have any consequences? You killed your business partner's daughter. That is gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he was already suspecting that you were up to something. Like he took extra care to protect her. Well, extra care, that's a whole other thing, but she still died. That's gonna be a vengeful father if I've ever heard of one, and he hasn't even needed vengeance yet. After you know that he's after you, or he seems like he's after you, you don't kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, like, yeah, the cops were already suspicious of you, but as long as they can't find a body, you're gonna be clear again. They didn't arrest you for the missing children's incident, alright? Especially a jury who needs to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are the killer. If there's no body, there's no forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for the missing children's incident, so like just off Henry, and then you can stay yourself, or even stay Springtrap, and then not get burned 3 times, and Michael would still be alive, and you wouldn't have had to deal with FNAF 6. Just a whole lot of stupid. But ultimately, in at number 2, Robophobia. This is literally the phobia that this game is made for, and like sure, it wasn't actually the reason that the game was made, like seriously, but this fear is perfect for these games. And while sure, the thought of mannequins can creep anyone out, Robophobia is literally the fear fear of robots and is surely the bread and butter of not only this series but for William as well. Because William must hate animatronics with a passion at this point. Since his victims possess them, he got spring locked by one, he can only survive by being in one thanks to his consciousness seemingly being sentient code. But I mean, like, come on, that's ridiculous. If he isn't scared of robots, that would be a miracle, and I think that he kind of deserves to be scared of robots too, since, you know, he's combined with one, and that would make him in constant horrific terror, which is something that I think we would all love to see, but also would fuel him because of the constant agony that he would be feeling. So it would make sense, and understandably so, because, I mean, if I was killed or should have been killed by a robot and I am now part robot, I would be pretty terrified of them. So, yeah. And finally, in at number 1, Baby. That's it. That's the number. Dude, he's the luckiest dude alive, alright? Your little girl was killed by a robot you made specifically to lure kids and probably got her design input on. And then you throw her in a storage locker and then she doesn't try to kill you immediately? That's pretty damn lucky. But if she is the Blob, then 45 years later, or whatever the hell it is, come security breach, she does kill you, and you probably, hopefully, at least, I really hope that you're dead at this point. Just please be dead. I really hope that it was the Blob that was Baby and she got so mad that she just, you know, ended it. And I'm putting this at the number 1 because I hope that it's a thing. In at 10, killed his kids. The worst thing that Afton has done by far is getting his kids killed. Like, sure, he may not have done it directly, but his actions end up resulting in all 3 of his kids' demises. Him killing Charlotte gets Fredbear's closed, which results in Circus Baby's opening, which made him have to dust off Baby and the other fun times which were designed to kill in the first place. Baby then ends up grabbing and crushing Elizabeth, resulting in her possessing that animatronic, because, you know, it was designed to lure kids and probably had her input. He superpowered the jaw of the Fredbear animatronic that was used at the new Freddy Fazbear's, which ends up crushing his youngest son's skull. And while you could argue that that was Michael, why would he think that Fredbear's mouth would be that overpowered? And as the suit technician, William knew what he was doing when he made it. And then he gets Michael killed when he sends him down to find his sister in sister location, which makes him learn the truth, and then also gets him stuff with Ennard, and finally results with him letting himself burn in Pizzeria Simulator. So yeah, William's actions get all 3 of his kids killed, but just because he had to kill his business partner's daughter. In at 9, possibly killed wife. Now, this hasn't been confirmed as of yet, so this is currently not really canon, but many people still consider William Afton offing his wife to be the story of her demise. Even though technically we know nothing about her and she could still be alive, many people consider her to have died either in a car crash or because William got a little fed up. Those are the most common thoughts on the matter, at least. Although her dying in a car accident came from like a FNAF music video from the Living Tombstones that was probably also using Minecraft characters, although I don't think it was. But like, yeah, it's in no way canon to the series. Yeah, I've had to tell people this in my DMs after they've been yelling at me, telling me that it's a canon car accident, but no, it's not. It's not even actually canon that she died. But the potential is still there that William was the reason she kicked the animatronic part-filled bucket. Since it's only really a possibility though, it's at number 9. If it gets confirmed though, I'm more than willing to bump it up on the list. Although statistically speaking, your spouse is the person most likely to kill you, so she should be on her guard. In at 8, lied about Remnant. Now, this isn't confirmed, much like the fact that he possibly killed his wife. However, this seems like the most likely explanation to me. So if you want a full in-depth dive as to why I think Afton actually was the one who lied about Remnant, be sure you go click the video linked in the iCard. I'm hoping. It might be. But I'm gonna summarize it quickly here. Basically, there have been 3 fires so far that were meant to finish off William Afton, and none of them have worked. The reason Henry tried fire was because that's supposed to be the thing that can burn off Remnant. However, Remnant can also be found in liquid form. So how can something be molten but also burn away if it's set on fire? That doesn't make sense. It makes more sense that William made up the lie that he can be killed with fire, so Henry would keep trying and failing to kill him with this method so he wouldn't have to worry about actually dying. Since literally every time he's been in a fire, he has survived. And the other animatronics infused with Remnant have also survived, like Baby, the puppet, and Ennard in FNAF 6, as we see in the Blob. So yeah, clearly it's not working, dude. Try something else. And at 7, missing children's incident. I mean, this is a fairly low-hanging fruit since it's like the inciting moment for the entire series, but I think it's still worth calling out at least at number 7. The missing children's incident, in case you forgot, is the infamous incident where 5 kids go missing inside a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and are never seen again. Police investigated, but they were unable to find any bodies, thus they had to let their suspect, in this case most likely William Afton, go due to a lack of evidence. However, this is one of the most horrifically painful moments that you can think of, especially if you're a parent yourself. 5 families went into Freddy Fazbear's wanting their kids to have the time of their lives in 1985, but left without their favorite people. They had the time of their lives alright, it just so happened that it was also the end of it. Not only that, but Afton ends up getting away with it since the police were terrible at their jobs or were getting paid off. Still not sure which one is the case in this series, but the missing children's incident is one of the most messed up things to ever happen in the series, but without it we wouldn't have the series. At least it's all fake though, on this earth. In at 6, animatronics. We can joke all we want about how Afton has a hardcore bloodlust in this series, but his desire for human destruction has been there since the very start. And thanks to the fast facts found in FNAF AR's files, we learned that the Funtime robots, the ones used in Sister Location, were actually some of the first robots that Afton ever made. Not exactly the first, but among the first. And they were built with special containment chambers to store away items, which we all know is code for children's storage tanks, baby. We see the Funtimes have kids inside them in their blueprints. So this means that Afton has been wanting to kill kids since before his kids had died. Hell, maybe even before they were born, depending on the timeline. Which at this point is as simple as my feelings for Vanessa, which are not simple at all. Halfway through in at number 5, meta theory. Now honestly, this isn't possible. Not even in the slightest. Unless Scott had some seriously messed up story in mind. But my meta theory is just because I want a chance to yell in this video. And to be frank, this would be my serial killer origin if I was Afton, okay? What if somehow, someway, William ended up seeing the FNAF Rule 34 art that's online? Specifically about his various forms, particularly Springtrap. I mean, that would be pretty blasphemous if I'm honest. And time travel does exist in the FNAF universe thanks to Into the Pit. So in theory, Afton could have gone to the future and seen the absurd Springtrap fan art and then gone back and had been so flabbergasted and traumatized from seeing himself lubing up Troll Tower that he went nuts and started killing the people responsible for his horrific perversion of his life. Whether it be specific people that did that or just the demographic that would grow up to then do that, okay? It could have just been the ships as well, like seeing himself shipped with the likes of animatronics that his kids end up possessing would certainly cause me to lash out. So yeah, not possible in the slightest, but funny as hell to think about, and frankly, understandable. In at 4, sacrifice. Maybe this isn't about fan art or a demon deal at all. Maybe Afton is just a religious man who worships the old gods, more specifically, the dark ones, and believes, like some ancient cultures, that sacrifice is the key to a peaceful and long life. I mean, in the end, if this is the case, he wasn't wrong. His misdeeds end up getting him possessed, which allows him to live for much longer than he should have, without food or water, after being spring-locked for 30 years, and through multiple fires. I mean, if this is his motivation, this would absolutely make sense to him, and actually to him be proven true. Like, maybe he doesn't know that his body is being possessed, at least until Ultimate Custom Night when the vengeful spirit reveals himself. Maybe until that point he genuinely thought that he was being kept alive by the gods. Hell, maybe even after the one you should not have killed reveals himself, he's still thinking that it's one of the gods instead of one of his victims. Crazy people believe crazy things, right? So who knows? Maybe Afton just thinks he's doing the Dark Lord's bidding in exchange for eternal life, or maybe an end to his suffering after losing his wife, or something like that, okay? There are many explanations, although I doubt that this one is very likely. I still like talking about it. It's fun to explore. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, dream theory. There is also the possibility that none of this was real, and that everything is actually a dream, which kind of negates the whole origin story thing, because in a dream, we don't need to worry about origin stories. We just worry about what's happening in the present moment. I mean, dreaming about yourself having a nightmare is a whole other level of meta, like Inception style, but also not really, because in this scenario, Crying Child would actually be dreaming about dreaming, whereas in Inception, they don't know that any of those dreams are actually dreams. It's also interesting since if Crying Child is dreaming all of this, he dreams that he also died, but then somehow the dream continues past that, which I've never had happen before. If I die in a dream, I wake up, which in my opinion makes more of a case for him being the vengeful spirit, but I don't like dream theory because it feels cheap, so I'm not even going to entertain the thought of it any more than I have to. If dream theory is correct, which seems to be no longer the case, but maybe it was intended beforehand, then the origin of William is totally obsolete, so let's hope it's not dream theory. But ultimately, in a number 2, time loop. Could Afton be stuck in a Groundhog Day-like scenario? Instead of a day, it's however many years. I mean, this one is absolutely wild and 100% guaranteed not to be the case, but ever since time travel was introduced into the series, it's a whole other thing now. Literally, the first Fazbear Frights book had to do us like that. Anyway, what if William actually actually started living his life on repeat, the same thing over and over. That would drive anyone crazy. I mean, like, just look at what happened to Bill Murray. But if we ended up thinking about it, if William didn't think that there were consequences and then he went berserk, maybe he started offing people because he could, but then the cycle broke. It's absolutely ridiculous, and again, 100% not the case, but it's pretty interesting to consider. I mean, the time-traveling ball pit had the golden Bonnie and was introduced for a reason, right? Maybe it's to show that Afton is all about time travel or something along those lines. Again, no way this is real, so don't yell at me in the comments. It's a stupid idea, but it's fun to think about nonetheless. And finally, in at number 1, psychopath. There's also the classic reason that there is no reason, and that William is just your typical run-of-the-mill psychopath who has no remorse for any of his actions. Now, the vengeful spirit, referred to as the one you should not have killed, seems to prevent this theory from being true, since if he had no remorse, nobody would be considered the one you should not have killed. But remember that actually, they named themselves. William didn't actually name them because the manifestations in his head were made by this vengeful spirit who wanted him to suffer. So William might not have considered them, whether it be Cassidy or Crying Child, one that he should not have killed, or at least had a hand in killing, but they could have considered it and like, you shouldn't have killed me because now I'm possessing you. Like, it's entirely plausible that William has no regrets for any of his actions, hence why he continued his killing after losing 2 out of his 3 children to it. I mean, like, he even sent Michael down there to see his sister possessing a robot who then also tried to kill him. So, I think it's safe to say that he probably doesn't care about losing people that he should love. He probably only had kids to actually seem normal, like those who are considered psychopaths or more commonly sociopaths. They do things to try and fit in, usually. And at 10, Sprung. So, this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that made the suits, handles the suit maintenance, and has explained to every employee that has to put one of these on the proper procedure and how, like, you don't get killed within the suit, ends up climbing inside in a panic in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful when he's facing off the ghosts of the kids that he killed, and then doesn't notice the moisture in the room, the leaking ceiling, just how wet everything is, which caused the spring locks to fail and replace every part of his body with metal. Wow. Which should have killed him. However, this lucky somehow managed to get possessed by someone who was so pissed at him that they kept him alive throughout all of his what should have been deaths because they just wanted William to keep suffering. Do you realize how counterintuitive that is? Like, the man literally wants to live forever, and now you are enabling him to do so. Old Man Consequences is right. Leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul so that Afton can finally die and then actually suffer in hell for eternity instead of like the dream version you made up while he was recharging underneath the Pizzaplex. Or, I don't know, before he showed up to FNAF 6. Whatever you were doing, okay? Whenever you were torturing him, for all, like, with the fake hell that you made up, God, come on. And at 9, killed his kids. The worst thing that Afton has have to him, or have done to him by far, is getting his kids killed, but it's also not something that, like, someone did to him. Like, sure, he may not have directly done it, but his actions ended up resulting in all 3 of his kids dying, alright? So, yeah, that's why it's higher. Him killing Charlie got Fredbear's closed, which resulted in Circus Babies having to open, which made him dust off Baby and the other fun times, which were designed to kill in the first place. Then Baby ends up grabbing and crushing Elizabeth, resulting in her possessing Baby. He superpowered the jaw of the Fredbear animatronic to use the new Freddy Fazbear's, which ends up crushing his youngest son's skull, since that was not a spring lock failure, due to all the, you know, the spring locks not actually being active. That's a whole other point that I rant about way too much. And while you could argue that that was Michael's fault, why would he think that Fredbear's mouth would be that overpowered, alright? If I'm sticking my finger in an animatronic mouth, I'm not assuming that it's gonna bite my finger off, right? So you just think that it's gonna scare the kid. And as the suit technician, William knew what he was doing when he was making that jaw. And then he also gets Michael killed when he sends him down to find his sister in sister location, which ends up getting him stuffed with Ennard, which then makes Michael want to let himself burn in Pizzeria Simulator. So yeah, William's actions got all 3 of his kids killed, but then he still had to keep going after it happened. But since he did it to himself, that's why it's higher on the list. And also, if you like FNAF, FNAF and you want to hear me rant more about it, be sure you hit subscribe, alright? We talk about it probably too much. We're talking about other stuff too though, so please watch those videos as well. And at 8, Burn Baby Burn. William appears as the optional yet canon final boss in FNAF Security Breach, appearing as Burn Trap according to his name in the game files, but also that's kind of a dope name. He only appears in the Afton ending or the Burn or whatever, the canon ending to the game, but this form is a result of Vanny downloading William's soul from like the digital realm to his old like hybrid abomination of an animatronic suit, like the endoskeleton that has still parts of his corpse, but also he's kind of upgraded with like a new arm and stuff, it seems. But also it's so convoluted that we can't exactly be sure what's going on. But he has his entire lower jaw ripped out. You can see his skull, it's still covered in blood. He has burnt flesh all over him because he's, you know, burnt. Metallic black eyes, purple pupils. The suit is missing fur. It's open chest. He doesn't have like a midriff. He's ruining all sorts of school dress codes at this point. His old endoskeleton, for the most part, has been replaced in some areas with endoskeletons that the glam rock animatronics use, making him now taller and having sharp claws. 2 of his fingers are replaced with like fleshy fingery bones still, so like he still has parts of his hand. It's horrible, okay? Like imagine having to go through that after going through the FNAF 6 fire. And then after that, having to go through yet another fire and a whole pizzaplex collapsing on top of you. Yeah, dude, what the hell? Just die already, please. And at 7, Henry. And while we did mention killing Charlotte, why didn't you off her dad after you realized that he knew everything? Like, why did you think that killing Charlotte would not have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he already suspected you were up to something. Hence the green bracelet that he gave her, since he was trying to take extra care to protect her and then she still died. I mean, he could have done more, but that's still a vengeful father if I've ever heard of one, okay? And he hasn't even needed vengeance at that point when he gave her the bracelet. So then, you know that he's gonna come after you, or at least seems like he will, so why didn't you kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, yeah, the cops are already suspicious, but as long as they can't find a body, you're gonna be clear again. Like, yeah, or even if you're paying them off, you'll be fine. They won't put you away for 5 missing kids. They won't put you away for a missing father as well, especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are the killer. And then without a body, there's no real forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for missing kids, so like, come on, just finally off Henry, and then you'd be able to stay as yourself or even Springtrap alive and then not get burned 3 separate times. Plus your son would be alive, so yeah. Well, Michael would be, not Crying Child. And at 6, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanessa away and prevent her from regaining control of her own body, or at least all of it. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a sort of failsafe that allows her to escape? I mean, sure, they didn't expect some random kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of this series and Afton's life, you'd think that maybe he would have smartened up, at least after 40 fucking years. But, cause like, this is like having a self-destruct button on a bomb, or if the Flash has like a steal all my speed button that someone can just press, it's just stupid. Like, if you want something to work, why give it a way to fail? You know? Like, this is like probably one of the dumbest things that Afton has done. You know what? I think there are some dumber things, but depending on the way you look at it, it could have even been higher on this list. But seriously, like, what's the point to put a way to undo your evil plans? Like, it's one of the most ridiculous things in this story. And I get that we can save her and have a good ending, but that ending isn't even canon. So like, we could have done without it. It's stupid at this point. William has the brain capacity of a freaking toddler. Halfway through into number 5, Crying Child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault since he didn't put Crying Child in Fredbear's mouth and Michael did that, and then the spring locks failing was because he was crying. Mostly people were complaining about that on TikTok. However, to me, there is no logical way that an animatronic jaw would have crushed his skull. And you know what? Even not just to me. It should be to all of you as well. The spring locks, like, they weren't in use. They didn't have to keep the things to the side because it was in an animatronic mode. And even if it was, an animatronic jaw would require so much power to actually, like, accomplish the closing of that. So like the only way that crying child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally superpowered the jaw of Fredbear, which would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine, or maybe even a backup kill suit, or maybe he was originally planning on using Fredbear, but then after his son got crushed in it, he was like, yeah, no, let's move on to Spring Bonnie, okay? This is just the worst way of going about it. There is no way that this was a springlock failure. The Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning that the springlock mechanisms, which are the things used to keep the robotic parts to the side, which are the things that would have failed, weren't being used. The springlock failure problem comes from when those mechanisms are put under stress of keeping the robotic bits away from the person inside the suit, and then they fail, and then that's when all the metal parts go back to where they were. So if it's in robot mode, the springlocks can't fail because they're already in use, okay? Keep in mind, again, the term for springlock in this context is referring to the parts that move the robotic bits away instead of the actual suit, which is also sometimes referred to as a springlock, but I'm talking about the actual bits that would have failed because they weren't in use. In it for Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, what about your daughter? I'm kidding, although we can't really be sure if she was intentional or not, but rather, I mean, what about getting your own kid killed? Like, I don't know how William thought that this was going to work out for him. I feel like this guy just thought, like, how do I capture kids more efficiently? Oh, I know, I can make a robot to lure them in, and then make sure that my kids love the design so that I know it will work. Hey, honey, come here, Dad wants your help designing this thing. Like, what? Because like then Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever and then going directly against her father's instructions to see the robot that is basically perfect in her eyes. Like bro, like, William, why did you think that this was ever going to work out in your favor? Why did you think that this was going to just be all peachy? When has a kid ever listened to a parent? Especially at seemingly what her age is, especially when they might be loaded because you have a successful entertainment business, okay? Spoiled rich kids listening to their dads when they say not to touch a giant robot made specifically to appeal to their generation? Yeah, great idea. You are a special kind of stupid. Just like add a blacklist of kids not to take. Really. I mean, you have facial recognition tech in FNAF 2. So come on, just set up a blacklist. Just do it. Listen to the Shia LaBeouf and just do it. Getting close to the end, and number 3, animatronics. Like how the absolute living hell did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would also ruin the pizza place. The heat from the animatronics insides when they're actually like moving around would also speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood of mucus and it was smelling like death. If this was real life and William getting away wasn't important for the plot, he should have been caught on that and that alone instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Huh, that's not related. Oh, they even make like bone crushing sounds when they move. And nah, we don't need to check these out. Or maybe we should. You know what? Fine, we'll take them in. Oh, look, we found the bodies of the missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest. Like, boom. I don't see how this wasn't an open and shut case right away. Like, this was so goddamn stupid. They shouldn't have made it to the first game. His whole plan was a dumpster fire of bad ideas. And even if you think it was the puppet who put the bodies in the suits, why would they do that? Like, why would they hide the bodies? But ultimately, in at number 2, Springtrap. Being the brains behind some of the most advanced robotic technology in the universe, we'd expect a lot from William Afton. Like, maybe using the brain that made these. Or maybe that's asking too much. Because, I mean, he's the suit technician, but he's also the main killer who avoided the cops for how long? So, you know, he should really know what he's doing, right? Apparently not, since after discovering the original 5 animatronics were possessed, he disassembled them to learn their secrets, but inadvertently released the spirits of his original 5 victims. When seeing them, he ended up panicking, which is kind of reasonable in my eyes because, you know, they're freaking ghost kids, but also they're ghost kids that you killed. So, then this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that handles the suit maintenance and has explained to every employee the proper procedure for the springlock suits, including the Spring Bonnie suit he uses to kill people, ends up climbing inside the suit in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful and scare away the ghost kids. However, dumbass didn't notice the moisture of the room, the leaking ceiling, and just his probably sweat, which caused the spring locks that were active in this moment since it was in suit mode to fail, which would have killed him, if only. And finally, in at number 1, the platinum rule. The biggest mistake that William has ever made, and I will stand by this until the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his own establishment, okay? If it's unknown if this was always his intention, or maybe if he planned to kill somewhere else and then just was like, no, I'll do it here. But, like, come on. Who the absolute hell thinks that this is a good idea? Who in the comments wants to justify killing your prime demographic for your business? Okay, dealers don't kill their best customers. It's bad for business. So why would William think that this is a good idea? Literally go anywhere else. This is basically just killing someone in your house. Okay, it's putting unwanted and unneeded scrutiny on everything you do. You even end up getting banned from going back while the investigation is underway. It didn't help your business either, okay? You had to close the first location, resulting in you opening another one that killed your daughter, and then you had to close that one and open up a new one, which ends up getting closed, and then you get locked in a room for 30 goddamn years, okay? This one mistake leads to literally everything else in the series. You don't do that. The platinum rule, we learned this from Barney Stinson. Don't crap where you eat, okay? If you just don't do it. Location. The location of the various crimes does actually factor into its effectiveness, believe it or not. The idea that William was killing in his own Fazbear restaurants is a ridiculous concept that in reality should have gotten him sent to prison. The saying is something along the lines of like, don't crap where you eat, which some take literally, others take as don't date people you see on a regular basis, and in this scenario I suggest that it should mean don't kill people where you're seen on a regular basis or, you know, constantly because it's your own business, especially if it's the business that like targets kids. And while yes, this doesn't instantly make you guilty, but come on, the first thing that anyone would do in this situation, not even a cop, would be question everyone who was working when whatever had happened, or whoever it was disappeared. And let's be realistic, an incident the likes of the missing children's incident from 1985 would ruin a business permanently. None of this somehow they stay open bullshit, because in the real world they would end up closing permanently, because no parent would want to go to a place where 5 kids went missing, especially when no bodies were found, which could maybe help them, but it certainly wouldn't help much. If Afton had any competitors, any at all, right? Even this world's version of Chuck E. Cheese, Afton should have gone there. If he had any competitors, or literally anywhere else, would have made more sense. However, he chose to kill where he eats, and that's probably one of the worst decisions that he could have made. Well, aside from, you know, the killing in the first place. Animatronics. While the animatronics are an entirely other mistake, this time around I want to talk about how stupid it was to hide the bodies in the animatronics. Like, how the f*** did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would already ruin the place, especially when its focus is eating pizza. The heat from the animatronic insides would speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that they were leaking blood and mucus, as well as smelling like death. If this was real, and William getting away with it wasn't important for the plot, he would have been caught instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Hell, they even make bone-crushing sounds when they move. We should probably check this out. Oh look, turns out we found those missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest for the murder of Cassidy, Fritz, Jeremy, Gabriel, Susie. Boom! Instantly. I don't know how this wasn't an open and shut case. Straight up, William was so goddamn stupid that he shouldn't have made it to the first game. Not to mention how stupid he was by building the Funtime animatronics with these item containment chambers, as he was calling it, since the cops ended up questioning him about why he made those design choices in the sister location opening scene. Plus, he superpowered the jaw of Fredbear from Fredbear's Family Diner to end up giving it a jaw that accidentally killed his son. Absolute moron. William, not the son. It wasn't his fault that he got his head shoved in there. If he had put it in there himself, it would have been his fault, but he didn't. Enemies. Now, while William did choose a set of easy marks, since, you know, kids can't really defend themselves against a dude in a part animatronic furry suit, but he's a moron for exclusively killing that demographic only. I don't know why he did that. Sure, it's easier on him, especially when he's fully combined with an animatronic, but Henry serves as the opposition to William, and the reason William ends up burning multiple times. It's not Henry's fault that he turned into Springtrap, but it's certainly his fault that he turned into Scrap Trap, since this is most likely due to the FNAF 3 fire, and the FNAF 6 fire turned him into Burn Trap. So Henry has definitely been a pain in William's side for ages. Killing Henry would have resulted in nobody being able to chase William, basically. Like, Michael might have figured it out, but he wouldn't really be in a position to do anything without Henry. Henry gave him the FNAF 3 job, probably, and definitely gave him the FNAF 6 job, so if William had just offed Henry after offing his daughter, he would have had a much easier time. At least, I'd think so. That's why every comic villain wants to kill the hero, right? Because if they do, they'll have a much easier time committing all their various crimes. So how is this any different? It shouldn't be. William is an absolute buffoon for not killing Henry when he had the chance. I'm sure it was Henry reporting him to the cops, like, you killed this man's daughter. Of course he's gonna have some form of vendetta against your ass. He's coming for blood, and he actively tries to kill you multiple times. That's not something that you should have just ignored. You should have just killed Henry after his daughter, because honestly it makes sense. Then you kill his wife, or the mother of Charlotte, as long as she's in the picture, knows about it, and actually cares, because sometimes they don't. But mom's gonna go after anyone who wronged their child, okay? Oh, that's something to witness, I'm telling you. Even my mom is vicious as hell, and she's like the sweetest woman in the world. So, you just get rid of the family, alright? Especially when it's your business partner. God, you're stupid. And while William may never have been caught for these acts, that's simply because he couldn't get caught, or the plot would make no sense. So ultimately, the game had to find an excuse for his ridiculous behavior. But William could have done wonders if he had just been slightly more intelligent and maybe actually thought about things. Killing kids in your own pizzeria is horrible for business, so do that somewhere else, okay? If he had, he wouldn't have hid the bodies in the animatronics, which would have prevented the kids from attaching their souls to the animatronics that they were stuffed into. Thus, William wouldn't have had to disassemble them, which accidentally released their souls, causing him to hide in his Springtrap suit. The Spring bodysuit would have failed without him inside, thus preventing Springtrap from being created, and William wouldn't have been sealed behind a wall for 30 years. During those 30 years, he'd still be possessed by the one you should not have killed, since they didn't latch onto an animatronic in the first place, they latched onto him, and he'd be unable to properly die still, but he'd have an extra 30 years to work on bringing his kid back to life. He wouldn't have needed to send Michael to get baby from Afton Robotics' storage facility, and Michael would have ended up fine. Fazbear Frights wouldn't have opened, resulting in the place never burning down, and the FNAF 6 game wouldn't have needed to take place. There would have been no need to repair the company image in FNAF VR. William would have been probably a millionaire, and he could have used that money to study ways to bring his son back. Perhaps discovering Remnant along the way, similar to how Henry created the Ella doll in the novels. William could have poured his grief into something, watched it become possessed, and then worked on recreating that in a robot version of his dead children. If his children even died anyway. Since Fazbear's wouldn't have closed, he wouldn't have needed to open Circus Babies, resulting in Elizabeth staying alive. And since Crying Child wouldn't have seen her get scooped, he wouldn't fear the animatronics. Thus Michael not needing to put his head in the Fredbear mouth because he thought it was funny, because his brother was scared. His brother wouldn't have been scared, so Michael wouldn't have needed to do that. William also just wouldn't have supercharged Fredbear's jaw, so even if Crying Child did get his head in there, which again I guess would technically be possible, he still wouldn't have died because of it. All of this simply goes back to William's first mistake, which was choosing to kill people in his own establishment. If that first kill also wasn't his business partner's daughter, nobody would have been suspicious of him and everything would have gone his way. Okay? Afton is smart. However, he could have been a lot smarter at the start, which would have resulted in him having an easy time on his killing spree, but I guess that would make for a very interesting game series, would it? And at 10, losing kids. This seems to be the most popular theory about why William Afton started his whole killing spree thing, because seemingly he didn't kill anyone until after Elizabeth and Crying Child died at the hands of the various animatronics. But there are those who also treat this as a proven fact. But honestly, this is proven to not be the case, okay? It is impossible for William to be a psychotic killer because his kids died. As we learned from FNAF AR's Faz Facts, William made the Funtime animatronics around the same time as the Springlock animatronics. So, from day one, he made the robots that were intended to kill. Plus, if you want to ignore FNAF AR's Faz Facts entirely, the fact that Elizabeth and Crying Child got killed by animatronics that were designed to kill, hence why they were killed by them, even disproves that idea before FNAF AR. So, while it would make sense, it's not truly the case. And some of these other explanations may end up making more sense. Although, to be frank, I don't think that anyone actually knows the real origin, not even Scott Cawthon. And at 9, divorce. Another popular reason is possibly because William's wife left him, and that drove him crazy. I mean, being a single dad to 3 kids would already be pretty tough, but maybe this idea goes beyond this. A lot of people also assume that William killed his wife, considering how she's not around, and nobody really ever mentions her. This honestly could be an option, but only because we know so little about the home life that William had before the games, or even before 1983 when we see the sister location 8-bit scenes. So theories about this are entirely plausible, even if they just rely on human nature rather than evidence present within the games. I mean, these are human characters after all. They don't have as much meat to them as the theories involving info from the games or even from the books, but it's still interesting to see the possibilities like this. Like, did William get divorced? Was his wife his first victim? Who knows? Probably not even Scott. Honestly, I doubt William's motivation is something that like he thought of when he was throwing out the last game, when he thought that the game would end up failing. Yet here we are, 9 games and like 8 years later, almost. And it ain't phone guy. Hold on, okay, hold on. Hear me out. I think that there is still the possibility, slight chance that despite what Scott might have said, that the phone guy could still be the killer. Now, this is probably almost definitely not the case. This is a list about speculating, right? Well, what if William is indeed the one recording these training tapes, and what we hear is what we see play out in FNAF 3's minigames? I mean, we thought that this was possible before, but then when they gave him a name, we figured that they were different people. But maybe they also gave us Phone Guy's name without us knowing it. I mean, what other reason would he have to be an Ultimate Custom Night? Unless the vengeful spirit heard the recordings and knew what Phone Guy sounded like? Plus, the animatronics bashing on the door could just be when William goes to disassemble them, which accidentally releases their spirits. But the tape's cut off before he ends up getting spring locked. Because, like, I don't know about you, but if I saw the ghosts of my victims, I wouldn't think like, oh, I need to vlog this. We have 2 different versions of Afton in Ultimate Custom Night already, so maybe there is a secret 3rd version, aside from the one we play as at least. And it's 7, accident. Now, aside from me, maybe this whole deal was an accident, right? Maybe more so than just his kids getting killed by robots intended to kill. Maybe William's real first victim wasn't Charlotte. Maybe he did kill his wife, but accidentally. Maybe they were a bit too rough, or maybe she had a condition that made her susceptible to falling or something, and William accidentally tripped her. Maybe when that happened, in whatever way it did, William saw the life leave her eyes and liked it, but then wanted to see how it would look on a kid. So he set about making robots that would help him see it. But his kids got instead. But then he still liked the sight of it so much that he continued. Maybe he wasn't built like it, but the sight of watching someone die, maybe even his wife or lover, awakened something deep within him that then propelled him to kill. It's nothing new, it's happened to plenty of people before, but William is dangerous. He knows how to cover his tracks. Despite the absolute buffoonery of his methods, the cops were none the wiser. Or maybe he was just paying them off. And at 6, demon deal. This may be because my brain is watching too much Supernatural, but the possibility does exist that in a world with possession, living corpses, sentient biological code that can possess animatronics and people, and where spirits can possess people to keep them alive to suffer, that there is in fact also a hell and demons. And if there are demons, maybe this is why William is absolutely god insane. Maybe he sold his soul to a demon so that his business would be successful. However, so that the Reaper wouldn't come to collect, William decided to start making sacrifices. Or maybe it was demanded of him as part of his deal or something. Maybe the demon he sold his soul to wanted a little snack every once in a while, you know, some baby back ribs. Or maybe, due to this deal, he seeked out getting possessed by a vengeful spirit so that he wouldn't actually be able to be sent to hell. Or maybe that was only a theory, but he was willing to try anything in order to keep himself from eternal damnation. Just an idea. I mean, it's definitely unlikely. Probably like 99% not the case, but it's still interesting. What got them to start killing or other psychological clues that could be used to predict their next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time being 1983. And this is the worst year of Afton's life too. It's time where everything starts going downhill in the worst ways possible. But he starts off killing kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, and I'm not a parent. So I can only imagine how this must have felt for Henry. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put him down, alright? I'd be doing it myself with my bare hands, especially if he had killed my daughter when she was 3 years old. Like, I can feel the rage brewing inside of me already, and I don't even have someone with whom I could have a daughter with, so yeah, although the Atomic Heart twins could. Anyways, and at 4, stored his daughter. While we know that Afton isn't the best father, I think it's something else to end up locking your robot possessed by the soul of your dead daughter in an animatronic testing facility. Like, that seems to be a bit too far, if you ask for my humble opinion. But nevertheless, he still did it, and that's what Sister Location is all about. And William was the one who sent us down there as Michael in the first place, and then we end up getting shoved full of Ennard bits so that they can escape. Like, I don't know if William knew about that plan or not, because in FNAF 6, Baby says that she wants to make her dad proud. So, was William's intention to send us down there so that Baby could get out, or were we just supposed to learn the truth? And if it was so that she could get out, why lock her down there in the first place? I mean, if she was your daughter, why not just have her chill around the house? I get that she's a 6-foot tall giant clown robot, but like in the books, Baby's able to transform between a baby and a human looking animatronic at will, so why not add that to this version? Then you can have your daughter back. I mean, she'll be a little bit more messed up and a hell of a lot older, but she'll be like you in a lot more ways too, right? I don't know, man. This family's messed the hell up. Nothing makes sense. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, stuffed. One of the most deranged things that William Afton did was stuff the bodies of the original 5 missing children into the original 5 animatronics. Bonnie, Foxy, Freddy, Chica, and Golden Freddy. And the craziest part is how he didn't get caught for that. The animatronics smelt like death and started leaking blood and other fluids, and the police didn't bat an eye. It says so in newspaper articles from the first game. He put these bodies in the animatronics that perform for other kids and their parents every single day. How does anyone think that that's a good idea? Unless maybe it was his way of like displaying his kill or something, like how some of the crime shows mention that that's a thing. I don't know. Some killers enjoy the world knowing what they did since it helps them feel more powerful or something like that, fuels their ego. Maybe even if they didn't know that the bodies were there, maybe William was getting a bit of an ego boost from that, which is also messed up and kind of ruins the whole he did it because his kids were dying theory more than him making kill bots before they died, but still. How did the police not confiscate the animatronics for evidence? I don't get it, man. They were literally leaking blood. That's not normal. Oil isn't red. But ultimately, in number 2, later that night. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since, in the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin the game to what happens after William kills Charlotte outside Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2 in the Take Cake minigame, but if that is true, this is one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, but then goes home to his kids. He reprimands his son and then abuses him by locking in his room, so much so that he has to break his window to escape. But think of all the people driving past him too, unaware of the violent crime that he just committed. It's terrifying because that would be the case in the real world too. I don't know, maybe this is the paranoia disorder speaking, but technically anyone we encounter could be a serial killer. And that is a horrific thought, since also, technically, you're only alive because everyone you have ever encountered has chosen not to kill you, which only makes the whole anyone could be a serial killer thing even worse. And you know what, in this case, this man literally just killed someone and then comes home and yells at his son who's been in his room all day because you locked him in there. God bro, how much residual anger can you have? And finally, in number 1, Vanessa. Possessing Vanessa was certainly one of the more messed up things that William did. It just sounds weird, you know? Like, this guy just pops up in your VR headset and then takes over your body so that now you end up killing for him. That's just incredibly messed up. I mean, she knows what's going on, too. Like, she actively talks in hushed tones about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So, like, what the hell is the dynamic here? I mean, possessing someone is already hella weird, but then causing them to make a rabbit furry costume because you're still a furry is a whole other level of kink that I don't even want to think about. And she also knows that there's an evil thing inside her, but she can't do anything about it, so she fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William's been saying to her. And then she's also now, with full knowledge of her darker half, willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, despite never calling the police because she knows her darker half is going to come out and track him down because she wants him.